This is The Secret Life of Ronald Reagan. Things you might not know about America's 40th president. Ronald Wilson Reagan was born in Tampico, Illinois, on February 6, 1911. He grew up in the Midwest during the Great Depression, became a college athlete, a radio sports announcer, a Hollywood movie star, head of the Screen Actors Guild, governor of California, and president of the United States. All these facts are in the public record. But what is not so well known about Ronald Reagan? Let's take a look behind the scenes. This podcast is brought to you by Clear Brush Productions, which presents a one-man show called Ronald Reagan Saves the World. I'm Terry Phillips, playwright and producer. For more information about the show, visit our website, reaganplay.com. Episode 2 in this podcast series is called Sinister Reagan. And no, it's not what you think.
Here's the story of my life. I've had fun, but there's been strife. For I was born left-handed, but I'm proud to be one of the elite. Right-handers we can beat. We're the 10% that stand out in a crowd.
That's Left-Hander's Lament by singer-songwriter Ian Radburn. My thanks to the folks at the Left-Handers Day website for sharing it. You'll find a link to their website in our show notes. By the way, Left-Handers Day is August 13th, so give them a hand. Ronald Reagan was one of only 8 American presidents known to be left-handed. All but one of them were born in the 20th century. We'll get to the others a little later. We call this episode Sinister Reagan because that word, sinister, comes from Latin and means on the left side. There are various theories explaining the connection between left-handedness and malevolence.
You sat up there in the rocks and you murdered him. Well, I'm calling you. You hear me? You've been called.
That's Paul Newman in the 1958 Western The Left-Handed Gun, about the outlaw Billy the Kid, based on a controversial belief that he was left-handed. He probably wasn't. In the Bible, the left is often associated with wickedness. That's probably why left-handedness was considered a sign of witchcraft during the infamous Salem witch trials. An article published in Psychology Today reveals many other myths about left-handedness, including that lefties are more creative or doomed to die early. But here are some facts. There are more than 700 million left-handers in the world. That's about 10% of the total human population. A group of researchers at the National and Cappadocian University of Athens, Greece, found that men are slightly more likely to be left-handed than women, but they're not quite sure why. Some people are mixed-handed or ambidextrous. They do some things with one hand and some things with the other, sort of like baseball players who throw left and hit right, or vice versa.
Batting right-handed, he tomahawks the ball more, and so hits on the ground more frequently than he does when batting left-handed.
Then, of course, there are switch hitters who seem to bat left and right-handed equally well.
There's the line drive to left center field for a base hit, and post is over.
They are extremely rare, only about 1% of the population. By the way, the phenomenon of having a dominant side is not limited to human beings. Other species can also have a preference. More on that a bit later. So, what's it like to be left-handed and to grow up as a member of this particular minority group? Wajahat Ali is a lawyer by training and a writer by practice. He's the author of Go Back to Where You Came From and other helpful recommendations on how to become American. I love that title, Waj. But you have to admit, it's rather provocative. For those who haven't read the book, where did you come from?
I am from the Bay Area, California, also known as Fremont or Fremontistan. My family hails originally from Karachi, Pakistan, but pre-partition, it was all India. Or you could just say I'm from my mother's womb.
Now, something you have in common with Ronald Reagan is being born left-handed. Tell me about the challenges you faced as a kid growing up lefty.
We are the most oppressed and silenced minority on Earth. 11 to 12% of us, my brethren, southpaws, living under perpetual right-handed tyranny, right-handed oppression. It's one of those situations where when you really kind of describe how it is to be left-handed, you kind of, it's so interesting because the entire world is created by and for right-handed people.
Yep.
And for us who are left-handed, we have to perpetually adapt. And it's one of those things you don't really appreciate or understand until someone actually mentioned it. So growing up, I remember a memory. You're trying to cut the piece of paper. And then you think, why am I unable to cut? And then you realize, because you're using the right-handed scissor, which is the only scissors in your left hand. And then everyone's laughing at you and you think you're like, something's wrong with you, you're intellectually deficient, and then you have to switch your hand, right?
Right.
Desks are made for right-handed people. So you're always like angling your body like a drummer trying to like hit like a specific beat or snare, right? Writing, everyone like sits there and goes, how come there's smudge on your palm? And you're like, I don't know. Like, how come you have the weird hook? You're like, this is the only way I write. So the way we perceive the world has completely shifts, and the way we have to adapt to the world shifts. And I remember as a kid, when you want to play sports at school, all of the mitts that they had were right-handed mitts.
Baseball mitts.
And there was no left-handed mitt. So it forced me to become more ambidextrous. And I think a lot of left-handed people are like that.
So what efforts were made when you were growing up to discourage you from being left-handed?
So in addition to society oppressing you for being left-handed, I come from cultures, Asian cultures and Muslim cultures, where the left hand is used for one thing. And that one thing is to clean your bottom.
In the toilet.
And you only use the left hand to do that. And back in the day, and even now, they try to convert you from being left-handed into right-handed. And so I am, to this day, Terry, the only left-handed person in my entire family, from both my mother's side and my father's side. And when I was young, my grandmother held my hand behind my back, my left hand behind my back. My mom threw tennis balls at me.
Assuming you would catch them with your right hand.
Assuming that would cure me. But instead what happened is these tennis balls bounced off my flesh. So I think that was probably assault and battery. And I was stubborn, and I just kept trying to wrangle my left hand and try to catch those balls. So basically it was very clear to my family it didn't take. And I was a stubborn little shit, and I would always be a left-handed person, which I am still to this day. And that's why I think, our left-handed brethren, this tribe that I'm in, it gives us an interesting, it's like you're part of a exclusive club where you see the world a bit differently because you have to fit into the world a bit differently.
So do you have any advice to your fellow lefties on how to function and how to thrive in this right-handed world?
Resist. Every day resist. And one day, inshallah, as we say, there will be a Ned Flanders who will open up a left-handed emporium. But it's one of those situations where I just say lean into it, because I do think if you kind of have fun with it, you realize that it gives us more superpowers. We are able to adapt. We can do things with our left, and we have been forced to do things with the right. So I think it's one of those situations where they say suffering is seasoning, and adversity can increase your depth of character and make you more resilient. In a strange way, if you really think about it, left-handed people can do more than the majority because we were forced to do more. So lean into that.
That's Wajahat Ali, the author of Go Back to Where You Came From and other helpful recommendations on how to become American, and a proud southpaw, with some insights into being left-handed, just like President Ronald Reagan. Speaking of which, this podcast is brought to you by Clear Brush Productions, which presents Ronald Reagan Saves the World. For more information about the show, visit our website, reaganplay.com. As I mentioned earlier, Ronald Reagan was one of only 8 American presidents known to be left-handed. That's 17% of all the U.S. commanders-in-chief, significantly higher than the global average. The others were James Garfield, Herbert Hoover, Harry Truman, Gerald Ford, George H.W. Bush, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. If you're keeping track, that's 5 Republicans and 3 Democrats, although I doubt there's any scientific connection between hand dominance and political party affiliation. There are many words and expressions that highlight right being good and left being bad. It's better to be in your right mind than having 2 left feet or receiving a left-handed compliment. Think about the French word for left, gauche. These labels are everywhere. Favoring one limb over another is not unique to humans. I promised to tell you about left-handedness elsewhere in the animal kingdom. Well, it's true. Other creatures can also exhibit this preference. Scientists have documented dexterity in the field. You can see it for yourself at home. Just play with your pet cat or dog and find out whether it has a dominant paw. There's some controversy over whether the 40th president was truly left-handed. After all, Reagan didn't sign his name that way. On September 30th, 1988, he threw out the first pitch at Wrigley Field in Chicago twice with his right hand, and then autographed both balls with, wait for it, his right hand. Maybe he was ambidextrous. Biographers say that while a schoolboy, Reagan was forced to write with his right. I guess the truth will have to be left to your imagination. Sorry about that. But not all Reagan's secrets must remain secret. Some will be revealed in my new one-man show. Speaking of which, this podcast is brought to you by Clear Brush Productions, which presents Ronald Reagan Saves the World. For more information about the show, visit our website, reaganplay.com. Thanks for listening. I hope you'll join us again for The Secret Life of Ronald Reagan. And when is the next episode? Well, that's a secret. I'm Terry Phillips. Bye for now.